This final part provided more context to some of the sound bites we saw from the reunion trailer, while in this part also Erika, Girardi slash Jayne may have reached the point of no return. Now, before we jump in to this recap and react for this fourth and final part of the season 11 reunion for Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, for those of you who are new, my name is Nick Zangl. Thank you so much for being here, and let's jump right into this recap. We start by picking up where last episode left off, with actually Andy this time defending Crystal, trying to ask for clarity from Erika. And Andy is saying to Erika, people aren't asking you questions because you lash out at them when they do. And Erika doesn't seem to think she is coming across confusing, angry, or defensive when the girls ask questions. So clearly, in my opinion, Erika is living in an alternate reality at this point in her head. Or it's just that everything she is going through is messing with her head, because even some of her closest friends on the show are saying it to her face here at the reunion. Now, when we get Erika bringing up, we then get Erika bringing up the dinner with PK and Mauricio and their wives, Kyle and Dorit, and reiterating how that was hurtful to her. And Kyle basically says, we can't control what our husbands say or do. Where Erika responds to that saying the same thing about Tom Girardi. She can't say or control what Tom Girardi said or did, and what he allegedly did or did not do. And she almost forgot to say did not do, and it was kind of one of those slip-up moments that I think they edited in a way to make it not look as delayed, but you can tell I think she's kind of getting to that point where she's tired of having to distance herself from her ex-husband that she clearly wants to defend for a number of reasons, which we'll get into that a little bit in a few seconds of the reunion. But we also get a rehashing then of the La Quinta trip and the following meeting without Erika at Dorit's, called on by Sutton. Now, Erika says she wished to have been included in that conversation, even though there is a pattern of her not reacting well to any of these questions. Now, Garcelle points out how she was treated bringing something up with a mic on and cameras on, and how that didn't go over well, so that's why things aren't going well. But even though Erika denies what she told Garcelle was when mics were hot and when cameras were on, which is clearly delusional considering you're on a reality TV show, you knew you were filming the show at that time, you were on a trip for the show, and you have cameras following you basically all the time, and we have footage and sound of what Garcelle repeated to the group in La Quinta. So then we get Andy and Kyle confirming something that's been kind of off the show at this point, which is what they heard of Tom's financial troubles from Bethany Frankel years ago, but thought it was just gossip, so they didn't relay it to Erika. Now, Bethany, if you're not aware, was a Real Housewife in New York. She's now this mogul. You probably heard of her in a lot of different ways. Even though they don't say Bethany's name here, they flash on the screen during the reunion an article headline saying Bethany's name for us. And I believe Erika has tweeted about this or something on social media in response to Bethany in some form. So I'm sure that's all happening there. But anyways, Erika explains the one scene where her mascara ran, where she was criticized a lot for kind of randomly picking when to not use waterproof mascara, even though she says she always wears it. It was the scene where she met Kyle for a hike and kind of unloaded her life onto her. She said she just happened to not be wearing it that day, even though she says she has allergies and that's why she wears waterproof mascara. And you'd think going to meet your friend on a hike in Los Angeles in late fall, early winter would make it a priority to wear waterproof mascara if you have allergies. But it's not the biggest deal in the world to me, although it does kind of help support the idea that I don't fully believe Erika doesn't want to be treated as a victim. And like I said before, it may actually help her to be portrayed as a victim. But it's all confusing, and she just can't pick which side she wants to be on or what narrative she wants to go with. So that's a big part of the problem. So then Erika confirms that she actually has spoken to Tom, her ex-husband, recently, and asked him why he would leave her with all these lawsuits pointing at her, of course, in this very emotional scene. Now, the trailer of the season, or of the reunion, made it seem, and the reaction to the trailer made it seem like Erika didn't mean to say this, and that she didn't mean to say she had spoken to Tom, but we see here she was just trying to share without crying what has happened, and the trailer made it seem like she had to stop herself from talking anymore because she kind of caught herself in something she wasn't supposed to say. Now, I don't know how you can see, or how you can say you aren't allowed to speak to Tom, but then saying now you've spoken to him a few times and he's been calling 5 times and this is what I've said to him. And Erika does later say that that's probably too much she shared, but it's too late at this point. Now, when Andy asks if she asked him if he stole from these people, Erika says it doesn't really matter anymore because he isn't there mentally and he's incompetent. So Erika then denies the allegations of the $20 million transfer to her Erika Jayne business account, basically. And she explains also that the $14 million reported to be her credit card bill was actually $14 million over 12 years. And Erika clarifies she is being sued, but she is not in bankruptcy. And so Erika makes a great point, which we touched on here toward the end of the season, I believe during the Del Mar trip, of where does the repayment end? Because a lot of people were funded by these funds Tom stole and his firm kept and stole, besides Erika. And so where is the line drawn of who has to repay their funds and who doesn't? Because if you didn't know that the funds were stolen, why should you have to repay? That's the question I think she was trying to put out there. Now, Erika and the girls all say they did not know of Tom's corruption ahead of it all coming out. And Erika says if she had known, she would not have been on a reality TV show or be making Erika Jayne songs about being rich. Because she says you cannot hide this kind of thing. Now, I don't know if I believe she is completely sad about this, considering she is becoming immensely more famous off this, even if it wasn't planned, and even if it means she's infamous. But I digress. Erika then pleads with Sutton to share the name of the lawyer Sutton shared at Dorit's meeting after La Quinta, who left the firm because he said his wife kind of saw things were kind of not adding up. And she pleads with Sutton to share the name because she says it'll help in the investigation and maybe help Erika out. And Sutton actually says, okay, I will. And I actually believe Sutton will actually try to figure that out. So we get back to Erika not getting how her reaction to girls asking questions makes them hesitant to ask other pressing questions. But Erika is also right about her actions and words that aren't going to please anyone no matter what. Or everyone, no matter what. This is where I continue the exhausting cycle of agreeing with Erika and seeing something how she does, but then it always reverts back to me feeling like she is delusional and not believable. But let me know in the comments if you're watching live or on the replay if you feel the same way. Then we get to everyone calling out Lisa Rinna for saying talking about each other behind each other's backs never works out, accompanied by a montage of all the times she's been in trouble for that. But then we get confirmation that Lisa Rinna was the one who tipped off Erika prior to Kyle's Christmas party about the meeting they had just had without Erika, followed by Andy reading a quote-unquote viewer question calling out Crystal, Kyle, and Dorit for not having a backbone in front of Erika, but pushing Sutton to speak up about things they had already mentioned and do their dirty work for them, basically. Garcelle then echoes this point too in defense of her friend Sutton, followed by Garcelle whispering to Sutton a question about if Erika has apologized to her, but Erika seems to have caught them whispering, sort of like the teacher in the classroom asking the chatty friends who to share in front of the class what they're actually talking about, where Erika says she will not apologize to Sutton because she doesn't think she's done anything to need an apology. Andy and Garcelle, say, well, you kind of threatened to come after her. And then we get this explanation on what Erika actually meant, which wasn't how it came across or came off the first time. And most of the girls weigh in agreement that Erika's comments came across as threatening to all of them, much to Erika's dismay of what she didn't intend, apparently. I have a feeling that Erika meant it as a threat, and now that she's getting pushback on it, she's kind of trying to make a different story up here, but I digress. So now, after the explanation, well, this adds to the evidence Erika is/was living in an alternate reality, in my opinion, because she clearly sees things that everyone else interprets completely different, unless she's doing that just to confuse people like we talked about last time. But Erika is now trying to minimize this threat by saying in Potomac and Atlanta, it wouldn't have been a big deal, the threat. But in Beverly Hills, everyone is so precious. And she says it in this kind of overly dramatic, kind of dismissive way. And on that, I want to say, well, yeah, every franchise is a little different. And that is the point of having multiple cities in this franchise, is that you find different perspectives and different ways of life around the country. And so maybe that is something in those other franchises that need to change, and because there's a threat in here and now they're making a big deal out of it, and maybe needs to be treated more seriously there. I don't know, but let's keep going. And if you have any chats any comments in the chat, I see you all in there. Let's pause right here actually before we get to the next part. Let's see. Nastia is here. Long time no see. Hey, Nick. I watched the replay of last week's episode and it was awesome. Sorry I missed it. You were spot on. Thank you for being here. I know everyone has different schedules and I've been doing Sundays and Thursdays and all this stuff, but I'm glad you're here for the final one of the season. And I'll get to kind of what's in store for the future of the channel regarding the Real Housewives in a little bit. But let's see. Nastia says, this reunion definitely didn't need to be 4 parts. So underwhelming. I agree, and I'm going to share in a few seconds, because this part had a lot of the sound bites from the trailer that we saw, I guess, a month ago at this point when it was all starting to air. And last week I talked about how there was questions, or a couple of parts ago, there was questions about if Erika knew the questions Andy was going to ask ahead of time. And I thought the reason it came across that way was because it was edited down from a long conversation to a short one. And that was the reason they made it 4 parts. Obviously now we can see they kind of milked it for ratings and for money probably, which I don't blame them. It's a TV show and they need to recoup anything, especially in a time when ratings are down across the board. But yeah, it is. I was expecting a lot more. Maybe our expectations were too high. Maybe that trailer that they put out was way too good for what it actually delivered on. But yeah, I agree. I think they could have cut out a few parts. But also, I think the reason it's 4 parts is because the huge storyline that everyone wanted to watch was Erika's, but it's a full ensemble cast. So they have to give time to each woman, including Crystal, who was a front of the season heavy storyline person, and so they had to give her kind of as the new cast member, they have to have a segment for her too. So and then Dorit, of course, and then Sutton and all the stuff. So I think that's probably why it was 4 parts. And I'm seeing too, even though I'm not going to cover Real Housewives of Potomac on this channel, that their reunion is going to be 4 part. I've been watching that season and I don't understand how they're going to stretch it out to 4 parts unless something crazy comes up. The other thing that I think helps with the 4th part is if they bring out the husbands, if they're involved in the season. But this season of Beverly Hills didn't have that happen. So I'm thinking Potomac, maybe that will be more of the case. But I do like the seasons of Real Housewives when the husbands are involved, because it adds a different dynamic and could warrant a whole part to their own. Anyways, I digress on that. Let's keep going, and then you can leave your chats as well. So next we get into the most dramatic part, I think, of the entire reunion, which is we hear Garcelle share how she regrets not stopping Erika from being a bully to Sutton at the dinners. And I thought this was actually very big of Garcelle to admit, because she clearly is noticing how she wanted one standard to be held, meaning she didn't want to be the only one called a bully, and kind of the racial angle to that, which wasn't brought up in this particular segment, but I think it was implied because Andy was saying Garcelle was called a bully, but Erika wasn't. And I think that was brought up in, I think, the first part with Dorit, how Dorit called Garcelle a bully, but not Kathy or not Erika or something like that. So I thought that was big of Garcelle to kind of take ownership of the part that she thinks she messed up on and kind of how it eats her up inside. And that was one of her big regrets. But I think what we also learned in this, that Sutton hired security for a week after that threat from Erika, which we just talked about. And then Erika doubles down on her threat, basically saying it was warranted because Erika said it felt like Sutton was being a, here we go with the big three words, a bitchy effing see you next Tuesday. You can spell it out in the word, I'm not going to say it. After Sutton said Erika wasn't handling this like an adult at that table. Now, this was a big old yikes and kind of cringe from me. And I do not think this helps Erika's case at all. But since Erika chose to use those adjectives, I would like to say the only person I've really seen acting like a bitchy effing cunt is Erika. So this whole season has been a pattern of Erika projecting a lot of her mistakes and a lot of her internal feelings on the girls, especially Sutton. At that dinner at Kathy's, when Erika was trying to say no one can ask questions and she kind of shut everybody out, I remember talking about this during that episode, which is Erika trying to make everyone else as miserable as her, who's someone who clearly made the mistake of trusting Tom and not questioning things early enough. And when she was questioning things, she got a cold response. So now that people are questioning her, she wants a cold response to them and wants to shut them out. This whole season has been that. And her saying these three words to Sutton, I think, is projection as well. I was trying to think of it. I thought of another example earlier, but I can't think of it now, which is, she wants to be given the benefit of the doubt regarding her relationship with her ex-husband and being implicated in that, but she doesn't want to give anyone else the benefit of the doubt when in their reaction to this. So I think it's just, this was kind of the point of no return that I mentioned in the intro, which is I think she's officially crossed into the villain territory, and at this point she might as well own it and just become the villain and just use it as an Erika Jayne persona and just become infamous, I guess. I don't know. There's something there too. Anyways, I'll get to your chats in a few seconds. Let me just finish out this part. But Sutton then defends herself, and Erika continues to, in my opinion, dig herself a deeper and deeper hole and share this revisionist history through her warped reality of what has happened over this season, in my opinion. Now, Sutton then wins this part of the reunion for me, again, by doubling down on calling Erika a liar in reference to Erika playing the fake friend game with Sutton in Del Mar. Erika tries to say leaving out parts of a story is not lying, but I think it is lying by omission to protect Tom. And I agree with Sutton that it isn't the worst thing to do to protect someone or something, but in hindsight, it does look bad. But just say that. You know what I mean? Say, I understand it looks like I'm lying but I was doing it to protect the man I once loved, and now I can't cover for him anymore, and I understand why and how it looks bad right now, but hear me out. I think a lot of people would understand that. Viewers, the victims, everyone else. And I think, like I said before, if she just leaned fully into the victim thing, meaning I'm a victim too, even though I wasn't owed all these funds, I was a victim of the manipulation of Tom and believing him, and I shouldn't have. I think that would go a long way with a lot of people. But let me get to your chats. If you guys have anything you want to say, I'm going to take a quick sip of water and then I will read your chats in a second. All right, Nastia says, I think Erika knows exactly what I'm coming for you means and meant every word of it. I don't blame Sutton. Erika is clearly unhinged, unremorseful, and has nothing else to lose. Yeah, I think that's a great point, Nastia, about her being unhinged, unremorseful, and has nothing else to lose. Yeah, at this point, she only has this show really and her posting on Instagram as her, basically as her income. And like I said, you might as well double down and just monetize that. But it is, if I was in Sutton's shoes and someone was threatening me like that, I would take it the way she did, which is for a few minutes, for a little while, be extra cautious about that threat. And then if it looks like it's not exactly what I thought it was, then I would calm down a little bit. But Erika also at the beginning of the season, remember in her Lake Tahoe 2 Truths and 1 Lie, she mentioned about being wearing a wire for a case or being a part of the mob or whatever. And all of it just, she wants you to be stupid, basically. When you're taking all these pieces that she's given us, all you can imply about that is that she's threatening and trying to take down anyone who's against her. Nastia says, Erika is handling this so poorly that people have forgotten about Tom. She's the best thing that happened to him. That is so true. And she's basically the fall guy. And she clearly is upset about that, because she says when she talked to Tom, which the fact that she even said she talked to Tom makes no sense, because you would think she would still not be able to talk to him. But she is the fall guy at this point, and that's her. She has to take responsibility, take accountability for the fact that she went into this marriage and basically signed her life away. And I think that's what Sutton was saying when she said that Erika made a deal with the devil being Tom Girardi. And now the devil is coming knocking, and she's going to be the fall guy for it. But unfortunately for everyone who wishes to see Erika basically go away and never to return, this is only going to, I think, elevate her status, unfortunately. If she ends up being not guilty and kind of being vindicated on the legal front, this could be kind of her redemption arc coming soon or whatever. So I don't know. We'll see. And I don't think Bravo's going to get rid of her anytime soon. So I guess we'll just watch it unfold and just be entertained by it at this point, and hope that we personally aren't affected by any of this. So, and take any lessons we can from it as well. All right, let's keep going. And we now pick up with Lisa Rinna apologizing for her role in the few incidences over the years, including Yolanda's Munchausen storyline from years ago, Lisa questioning Kim, Kyle and Kathy's sister, who are sitting there, sobriety, and her role in poking Denise Richards last season to open up more about things she clearly did not want to talk about. Now, time will tell if Rinna has learned anything from these mistakes, as Garcelle pointed out in the finale regarding her issues with Rinna. But Rinna ends this apology segment dedicated to her, saying she believes she is still a great friend. Erika agrees with her. Kyle kind of agrees with her, but she has this smirk and kind of smile chuckle on her face. I don't know if she really means it or she's just laughing at the fact that Rinna just had a whole segment dedicated to her apologizing. I don't know, but I thought that was an interesting reaction from Kyle. But we then continue beating the dead horse of using the word liar in reference to Erika and confronting Erika, the whole drama with that, leading to the soundbite of Erika asking, quote unquote, "Can someone back me the fuck up on what I'm saying?" Which was a different context than the trailer made it out to be. I wrote here #disappointing because a lot of the sound bites that we were most excited to see in the trailer ended up being taken way out of context for the trailer, and not really happy about that. But what's disappointing about that is the trailer for the season delivered on all the parts we saw in that trailer throughout the season. The trailer, however, did not. And Erika then continues to add even more detail and correct other details to the Tom car accident story that we've heard years ago, and then more details trickle out of Erika's mouth throughout the season about it's the car accident behind the house. And she also then declines to share more about the aspect of her son going to visit Tom after his burglary and cataract surgery, where he flipped his car in the snow. She said, I'm not going to elaborate on that, which I thought was interesting. But while she was sharing this story, she seems very animated sharing it this time, as opposed to all the other times before where she was kind of just like dry, deadpan, kind of just, man, laissez-faire, man, this is another detail, here's another detail. And we get clarity on why Erika has been adding more allegedlys to her stories. And she says it's because her lawyers were not happy with her sharing this. But it's kind of too little too late at this point. It's already out there. It's already on film. It's already been released. What's the point in adding the allegedly at that point? But we also then get clarity on why her son went over to Tom's after the burglary, not his biological kids, because her son was his stepson. And that is being the exact problem, which is Erika and her son being, from what she says, his only family seeming to care about him besides his now conservator brother, which may further explain Erika still instinctually wanting to cover for Tom and still having some love for him, where she doesn't want to fully, well, she clearly doesn't want to fully believe that he would do this. She said at the beginning of this reunion that she doesn't want to believe that he did what he did. So there's that. All right, so then Erika says something that the girls and myself, when I heard this, agree would have gone a long way for her a long time ago, in that the best thing Erika can do to help the victims is to cooperate with the courts and all the investigators and whatnot. And I agree with that. But what I did notice was during this, when she was sharing about cooperating, she was referring to herself in third person during this part, which was a little weird and indicates to me her mindset being a little egotistical and kind of detached from reality if she's able to refer to herself as in third person. Now, Andy wraps up the Erika grilling, quote unquote, now, because it wasn't what we expected, with input from other girls on how they feel now that we've talked about this with Erika. And Garcelle says she's okay for now, but she doesn't seem to think that her friend Sutton and Erika are going to get along. Sutton says she's happy to have more clarity and answers from Erika. Erika apologizes to Crystal, and after Crystal says or responds to Andy asking if she has anything to add, she's like, no, I'm good. I'm done. And I don't blame Crystal at that point. I do give credit, though, to Erika, even though I don't agree with a lot of what's going on, for showing up and showing her face, even though it does seem to get more muddied every time she talks. And also, on the other side, in my opinion, I think deep down she is happy about the attention this is giving her. So Kathy then ends the scene with her attempt at drama with Garcelle, clarifying why she didn't attend the Haitian dinner because of her virus exposure positivity situation. And I thought that was, again, Kathy interjecting some lightheartedness in a season that was very heavy and dark at times. And so before we chat some more, and you give me your live chats here, I would like to kindly remind you before you leave, and if you don't want to chat or if you just want to hang out, to do whatever you have to do to show support or love for this episode, and do whatever you got to do to make sure you don't miss an episode in the future. Brief note on the future. So I was saying I'm going to only cover the Housewives in California, meaning Beverly Hills and Orange County. I've been seeing rumors that Orange County has been moved up their premiere date. On the Wikipedia, which is where I check to kind of see a few stats as an anchor to looking up some things, they show it as a November 30th, 2021 premiere, which would be a Tuesday, I believe. And it was at December 1st at one point, which is a Wednesday, which is what the same night this was on. And so it looks like we're going to actually have a shorter break between these recaps and reacts, which I'm happy with because I like doing these, than we thought. And it looks like there's going to be a housewife to recap basically all year, because these air for about half the year. There's 24 episodes, and there wasn't a few weeks, so it's basically half a year from start to finish, which I'm happy about. And I don't think Beverly Hills or OC ever overlap, so it's perfect for me because I can recap once a week for the whole year. So there'll always be something there for these shows. So I just wanted to throw that out there and just talk about that. Let me get my notes up really quick on that front while you guys are typing and you're liking, subscribing, doing all the things. And should the Orange County premiere end of this month or beginning of December, of course, during the holidays, meaning Christmas and New Year's, there'll be a little bit of scheduling things, but we'll make it up in the new year, early in the season, so that way we can be consistent going throughout the rest of the season as much as possible. And I'm guessing that this Sunday during the Potomac reunion part 1, I'm thinking, and Salt Lake City, which is going to start showing the Jen Shaw legal issues there. I'm guessing we're going to get a commercial or a trailer for Orange County if it's true that they're premiering at the end of the month or at the beginning of next month. So, with that said, let's get to your chats. All right. Actually, let me go to my last picture. There we go. So let's see what everyone is saying. Nasia says, when you pick and choose when you decide to be a good friend, you're not truly a good friend. Rinna fluctuated between villain and lapdog these last 2 seasons. Friends hold friends accountable. I completely agree. She clearly doesn't... Her actions clearly aren't aligning with wanting to change, because this is a pattern that keeps happening over and over again. Nastia says, Erika dodged a lot of questions instead of answering them. Like when Andy asked if she talked to Tom and she said he called her 5 times today, or how are you paying for everything? And she said to Andy, you talked about how much I make, so there you go. That was frustrating. Yeah, and although I did praise her for showing up, she didn't answer everything fully, or she kind of went in a roundabout way, or implied something or inferred something with some other information, meaning when she was asked if she knew what was going on, she said, my financials were tied up in the firm. Not saying I didn't know. She's just saying I didn't have access. Now, if she didn't have access, that doesn't mean she didn't know. If you really think about it. Although her finances were tied up in the firm, doesn't mean she didn't know. So, yeah. And there's a lot of pieces to this that are kind of what's going on. Now, while you guys are chatting some more, I wanted to actually do a little wrap up of the season, which is kind of, we talked about this in the beginning of the reunion as this being sort of a job interview for the next season. And I was thinking about this earlier as I was prepping for this. And I think we need Kathy and Kyle as a package deal still. Kathy can be a friend still because she was pretty much in every big scene, even though she's only a friend. But Kyle needs Kathy on the show, or Kim, to kind of be relevant, if you will. Of course, we need Garcelle and Sutton because they are kind of ride or dice for each other. And we're the ones really questioning Erika the whole time. Of course, we need Erika, even though some people don't think she should get a platform for what she's doing or what she's accused of and the way she's acting, but it is juicy television. Lisa Rinna, I know a lot of people would like to see her off the show, but she makes for good TV. She is a good pot stirrer, and we need a good villain, and I think she fits the mold perfectly. As far as Dorit and Crystal, I think Crystal, what has saved her on this season was one, the beginning of the season, she basically carried it with Sutton. But I would like to see the dynamic between Crystal and Sutton in a new season, considering at the end of this episode that when they were all cheersing with their drinks, they kind of both chugged their drink and ate the olive of the martini. And they were kind of hinting at we might be more alike than we think. And I think this has been touched on before, which is what is fascinating about these shows, the Real Housewives, is the season-to-season change in dynamic of the group and how friendships form and some break apart or there's wedges between them with new girls and whatnot. So I think Crystal saved herself, even though on this reunion she barely said a word. I think next season we need to give her at least 2 seasons. I think that should be the rule, because the first season she's probably figuring out what's going on and she's new to the franchise, new to being in front of the camera and all that kind of stuff. So I think we need to give her a second season. As far as Dorit goes, she obviously saved herself, in my opinion, or she was saved by the story of the burglary that just happened apparently the first day of filming, even though it was rumored she was going to be on the chopping block. And I saw a rumor that Leah Remini, the actress and former Scientologist who's outspoken, was going to be on, which I think she'd be a good fit. Maybe as a friend at first, because she knows probably a lot of these girls because she's an actress. She's been in the industry a long time, been in LA and whatnot. So I think she would be a good fit. But Dorit, I think, saved herself or is saved by that storyline. And before that, I was kind of indifferent. Like, do I really care if Dorit's there or not? She was okay. She just was kind of scraping at the bottom of the barrel to kind of have a storyline this season. I mean, I like her husband, PK. I think he's honest. I think he gives good takes. So there's that. Now, let's see what Nastia is saying before I give a final thought also. Nastia says, I need a Kim, Kathy, and Kyle. Kathy and Kim's quirky personalities would bring the fun back to Beverly Hills. Yeah, I think I said that last week. I think you probably saw that on the replay, but I agree. I think seeing them all three together, especially now that they're all getting along, I think that would be fun to see. Even if Kim and Kathy are both just friends of the franchise next season, or Kim just comes in as a guest of the show, I think it would be really fun to see that dynamic, for sure. And I think that sisterly dynamic is needed on this show because, in a lot of the shows, the family dynamic is always good. But on the Kathy front, also, I wanted to touch on something. I when they were doing their final thoughts for the season and kind of what they wish they could change and whatnot, and Andy asked Kathy what she was surprised about as her first time on the show, and she said she was surprised at how real it was. And that was a very kind of it was a glossed over comment within the group. I don't know if they had more to say on that actually in filming and they cut it out, but I was watching her interview on The Real, Kathy, which is the show that Garcelle co-hosts, and Garcelle was doing the interview with Lonnie Love, and she brought up the same thing, saying Kathy said she was surprised at how real the show was, meaning there wasn't a lot of like producers whispering in their ears to kind of set things up. The girls were able to eat on camera. It was like a real dinner. And how she was surprised at how quickly people would make up, even if they had a little tiff. So that was kind of an interesting comment to me, because maybe it's just an indication that, because she has experience with Paris Hilton, obviously, who's really a pioneer in the coming of age of reality TV with The Simple Life and all the things she's done. So maybe her experience from Paris's perspective on her show was that it was highly produced and kind of staged. And we know now that Paris kind of put on a character with that the voice she would do, the baby voice and all that kind of stuff. So I think maybe that was Kathy's experience, and maybe these shows are actually the more real ones. I'm not sure, but I know Kathy, I think she was on, I forget what show was with one of the Jacksons. I think it was LaToya Jackson, maybe. She was on that show as a friend of hers. And so maybe a lot of shows that she's had experience with and some things she's heard are fake. But it also makes me think she's known Kyle and Kim throughout the entire run of the show. Granted, some of them weren't speaking at some time. So is Kathy admitting that Kyle and Kim at some point have told her that part of this was staged and that it was kind of fake, or that some storylines are fake, or at one point there was producers and people maybe that aren't a part of the show this season that were kind of planting things and kind of staging things? I don't know, but I thought that was an interesting comment that was kind of just said at the end and wasn't really addressed. So let me know what you think of that. I'm going to take a sip of water while you're typing. So I'm going to give a few more seconds for any last thoughts on the season. If you're listening or watching the replay, whether you're on YouTube or on Rumble or on your favorite podcasting platform, make sure to comment in the main comment section wherever you can, and I will read them and respond back to those after we're done being live here. I want to thank everybody who stuck around the entire season and maybe joined along the way, or catching up now, or maybe if you're on the replay, for sticking around this whole season. I'm actually really proud of myself for finishing out the season. I liked having a show that held me to a schedule, even though we were a little fluctuating here and there because of scheduling issues and whatnot. But it was really cool. I'm glad I went for it. It's a little different from the main topic of my channel prior to doing this, but I think it's a staple on the channel, and I figured I can do both. So I will be doing a news live chat tomorrow, which is the other content I do besides the Real Housewives specific thing, even though this is newsworthy. And the topics of that kind of vary from politics to pop culture to internet culture to business news. Anything I'm interested that I see in the news and I want to talk about, we do that. So make sure to tune in that same time, same place tomorrow, Friday. There'll be a reminder link coming pretty soon on my community tab. And if you are not already, in the description, once we hang up here or end here, there'll be a link to my website in the description, and there you can sign up for my free email list, which I give you updates and FYIs to videos you may have missed and links to all my social platforms. And it's a great way for us to connect. If you want to privately chat me, you can respond to that email address there, nick.zangl@nickzangl.com. And it's kind of like a direct message kind of thing, but email form. So we can do that as well. And it's just a great way for us to connect for whatever reason. If any of the platforms go down or we're cut off from communication on the main platforms, that is a way for me to get word out to you. So let's see. Nastia says, thank you, Nick. You're welcome. Let's see. Hallie T. Lightwork says, can't wait to rewatch this. Thank you for doing this. You are welcome. And like I said before, I will be doing Real Housewives of Orange County in the same format. And one more note on this whole season, it's been interesting to see the journey from the first episode I did till now and kind of the changes that have gone on, but I'm really happy with how we've ended and the thumbnail style and the format and the graphics and all that kind of stuff. So thank you so much for joining again, Hallie. And I look forward to seeing you all in the Real Housewives of Orange County first episode premiere. I'm thinking I might do, depending on when the premieres, a pre-season video, because I don't know if you know this or not, but Real Housewives of Orange County, that is the show. Obviously, that's the first Housewives franchise, but I said this in my first episode of this season of Beverly Hills, was explaining how I even came to know of Real Housewives and why I even watch, because I'm not really the typical demographic. And long story short, I am from very close to where they filmed the first seasons of the Orange County Housewives. And so it's been a part of my life for, I guess, 16 seasons, 16 years at this point, which is more than half my life. And so it's just kind of one of those things that I grew up on and was interested early on, and it just kind of evolved, and you kind of get invested in people's lives. So thank you so much again. I've rambled on enough. I will save that for the preseason Orange County video or live. And thank you so much again for joining me, and I will talk to you in the next one. Bye-bye.